We were in the end of chapter Rishon Gimel 253, which is dealing with the laws of Shiur and Chazara on Shabbos. Until now, we discussed the regulations in regards to how to set up your blach before Shabbos. Last week, we went through the ruling of the Ramah and the Alter Rebbe, meaning the Alter Rebbe's take on that ruling of the Ramah. The Lechatchila wanted to set up his blech with enough time before Shabbos so the food be hot by the time sunset arrives, even if the food is currently hot. Remember, we said that even if you just took off your food from the flame, it's on your counter now, it's boiling hot, you should still set it up on your blech with enough time before Shabbos that it would be hot if it were to be cold. We also went through last week, we began laws of Chazara and heating things up on Shabbos itself. And we began explaining the law of placing food on top of an upside down pot. In general, it's forbidden to cook on Shabbos. So whenever you want to heat something up on Shabbos, you got to ask yourself, is this going to transgress a cooking prohibition? The cooking aspect, however, is only dealt with in chapter 318. That's a very far distance from where we're holding in 253. 253 deals with a different aspect, and that is even when we have negated any cooking prohibition from a food, the sages still restricted how you are allowed to heat it up on Shabbos. Now, what's the reason? If there's no cooking prohibition, then what's the issue? The issue is the sages decreed against doing something that looks like you're cooking. Michsi kemavash. So just like you can't cook, you can't do looking like you're cooking. So because of this, there's a restriction of how you can place something on a fire in Shabbos. So last week we went through that when you remove a food off a fire, you have to fulfill 6 conditions in order to return it back onto the fire. It's hold on to the whole time, you have to intend to put it back, the food cannot have cooled off, the food has to be fully cooked, the fire has to be covered, etc., etc. And we explained the following case in Sif Gimel, and we're going to continue off that case in Sif Hey, which is the last Sif of the chapter. He said somebody woke up in the morning and he smells his cholent burning on a fire. Now, this is talking about a case that it's on an open fire. So what does he want to do? So first, the Mechaber in Sif Dalet says you absolutely cannot pour water into it. Certainly not cold water, as that's cooking, and not even hot water, because how are you going to pour it in? Where is your hot water? So if your hot water is sitting in a thermos, the water is now in a klisheni. When you take that water, even if it's hot, and put it into your cholent pot, it's going to go into a klirishin, which is on the fire. In the same way, and we just said before, you have to fulfill 6 conditions in order to be allowed to place something back onto a fire. The only case that would be allowed is if you have an electric urn, and you can either move your urn to your cholent pot or move your cholent pot to your urn and press it so hot water comes out into the cholent pot from a distance, because this can enter into shilos of kashrus. We didn't touch upon this last week. We did this last shift pretty quickly.
What does the urn do for us?
What's the issue we shown? That's the difference, right?
The issue is like this. One of the conditions of the 6 conditions is that you can't return water on, you can't put the water onto the pot if the water wasn't on a fire when Shabbos began. Now, in an urn, electric urn, it is on the fire. So that condition is fulfilled. The problem is, though, is that it can't go through another vessel in the interim. I mean, I can't scoop out water or use water, place water in a cup, klisheni, and then put it in, because we still have the klisheni issue. It has to go directly from a fire to a fire, without any in-betweens. So because of this, the only option left is to do some movements. Either you move the pot of cholent to your spout of hot water under it, or you move your hot water to the cholent pot. There's no other way to do it. Now, in the event that you want to move your cholent pot to under the hot water, then you have to be, or whatever way you're going to do it, you have to be careful that your power of hot water urn that you use for coffee in the morning with milk doesn't become inflation. Unless you have a power cholent, then you have nothing to worry about. If you have a fleishik cholent, So bottom line is that it's not the best idea, so try not to burn your cholent. If you didn't follow the best idea and it's burning, then what you can do is you can put it in from a little bit of a distance, make sure to allow the steam of the cholent pot to escape prior to putting it under the spout, and then already uncover it beforehand so the steam doesn't all go up as soon as you open it up into the spout. And avoid splashing. That's the main issues you need to avoid when you're doing it in such a way to make sure your cholent pot does not burn. Now, the case the Mechaber explained in Sif Gimel, this was Sif Daled. Sif Gimel was that you don't plan on putting water into it. It's not yet burnt. It's still good and edible, but it will be burnt if we leave it on this fire. So how do we, on the one hand, diminish the fire, diminish the heat, and at the same time make sure the cholent's going to be hot by the time we want to serve it? So that's by making a distance between the pot and the flame. So the question is it allowed? And Mechaber says yes, it is. You can take an upside down pot, place it over your fire, and place the cholent pot on top of that. In essence, creating a blech and a distance between your fire and your cholent pot. So we explained last week that this is only permitted in a case you fulfilled all 6 conditions, meaning I remove the cholent pot, I'm holding on to it the whole time, I have intent to return, etc., and then I place it on top of an upside down pot. But to initially take an upside down pot and put it on top of an open flame on Shabbos, and then start heating up all your foods on top of it is forbidden to be done because it looks like you're cooking. There's not enough of a distance. That's just like a blech. The same way you can't place it directly on a blech, so too you cannot place it on this upside down pot that's covering a fire. And I emphasize covering a fire.
Wait a second. The worry, so what allows it is the worry of a possible burning of the, all of a sudden the worry.
Now, the Mechaber gave a case, and in a case where you would want to do this. If it's not going to burn, why mess around?
Okay.
He's just giving you a scenario why the person would want to create this contraption on top of this fire.
But then it's allowed, you're saying?
But it's always allowed. It's always allowed to remove a food from your fire. Okay, we do this all the time in our blech. The chicken is burning, so we take this little elevator of metal, I don't know what it's called, it's like these little placemats made of metal, and you put it under the pot. What's the issue?
Okay.
Even if I take the pot off the fire while I set it up, so long as I'm holding onto the pot the whole time and have intent to return, you're filling every condition necessary so you can do it. It's not an issue. So too here with the cholent. However, let's say I took out a pot of rice from my fridge. So if it's wet, moist, there's a cooking prohibition. There's nothing to talk about. Doesn't matter what contraptions you do, it's never permitted. However, if it's dry, the rice is dry and the under the cover is dry, no moisture, you either dried it or it's dried to begin with, then can I place it on top of an upside down pot? So if it's sitting on your actual fire, then no. If I have an open flame on my stovetop, and I take an upside down pot and I put it on top of that, then in essence, what have I done? I've created a blech. Now, can I put foods on my blech on Shabbos l'chatchila? The answer is no.
Yes, no. If you had a blech before Shabbos, then you can do that. Right?
You're already reaching the case of Sif Hey. The case of Sif Gimel is that there is no blech, just a fire. The case of a blech is Sif Hey. So now comes the question, what if you do have a blech? You do have an electric plate. And I'll mention, we've mentioned this before in our previous series of this course, that there are some who are lenient regarding electric plates and even blechs to say it's not a form of cooking. It doesn't look like you're cooking ever on this contraption.
Anyway.
So they want to say that it's not similar to the upside down pot case. The majority of places do not agree with that approach. And also, in reality, the approach doesn't seem to hold any water because you can cook on a blech and you can cook on an electric plate. We do all the time. We cook fish on it, even the chatchila. It's a great fish cooker. You can cook on an electric plate, so unless yours is kind of broken. But if it works, you can cook on it. Try it at home. You'll see. And I don't know if you can cook, tough meat, but light foods can definitely be cooked on electric plate. So those who say it never looks like you're cooking on an electric plate, it's not necessarily correct. In reality.
Plus the upside down.
Oh, so that's the question. Does it help? If I have a blech, can I now take an upside down? So you probably know that it does, but now we're going to learn it. Okay, this is it. Sif Hey. Motor lasses a pikederes gaan Shabbos, tafshel shel espashel erev Shabbos, kol tzorke gen pandish. The gates werden gaan the fish in derch bishul bekach. Aber hatten tags begonnen man as soon as gabe mechem vadayos. So Mechaber says like this: It is permitted on Shabbos to take a pot of hot food. Sorry. It is mutter on Shabbos to take a food, such as a pandish, which is basically a kugel. Okay. A cold kugel from your fridge. Again, we did the moisture test. No moisture, no isser bishul. It's dry. And to place it on top of your pot of cholent in order so it heat up. There is no isser on Shabbos called thou shalt not heat up foods. It doesn't exist. Maybe rabbinically it does, in a case where you're heating up in a forbidden manner, like we just explained. If you took your kugel and put it on top of the fire, I didn't light it, so before Shabbos. It was fully cooked, dry, you're right. No one's going to say you're cooking, but we are going to say it's looking like you're cooking. So you can't do it. And this is the rabbanon of cooking. But in the case where you're putting it on top of a pot of cholent and it's going to heat up, it's not a problem. Says the mechaber, why? As who in their right mind will think you're cooking when you're doing that.
We all of a sudden switch from a black to a crock pot or something. What did you mean by that? You're talking about a black?
This case is talking about there's a pot of cholent on an open fire. Okay. Well, yes, I'm going to use this case to explain the blech case. Okay, I'm going to use this case to explain the blech case. We're going to get there. This is the source of it. Okay, so we have a cholent, same case as case gimel. Okay, just case gimel was that you want to take the cholent off the fire, put an upside down empty pot on top of it, and put the cholent back on, which says is permitted, but it came with a catch. It's only permitted because you fulfilled all 6 conditions. You took off the cholent, you held onto it the whole time, etc., etc. Now we're talking about a case in Tsfat where you want to initially take the food out of your fridge that's dry and fully cooked, so no cooking issue, and place it on top of your pot that's on the fire. Even on an open fire. Certainly if it's on a blech, it's without saying, right? If even on an open fire it's mutter, then certainly if it's on a blech or on an electric plate, it's mutter. An open fire is more severe in halacha than is an electric plate in blech. So even if it's on an open fire, you can take this dry and fully cooked kugel and place it on top of your pot in order for it to heat up. On Shabbos, even if it's going to heat up to Yatzil Ledis, we don't care, there's no issue. And the reason is because there's no cooking prohibition, as we discussed, and there is no looking like cooking prohibition because it does not look like you are cooking. Now, what if I see that it will not really get that hot by simply leaving it on top of the pot? I want to do some insulation. Just take a towel and cover the kugel with a towel on top of the pot. Nice and cozy in there. Make it nice and warm. So the mechaber here concluded, is certainly forbidden. So that is certainly forbidden to be done. You cannot on Shabbos take a towel and cover this kugel that is on top of your cholent pot. Furthermore, you can't take a towel and cover your cholent pot. Okay? As we're going to learn in chapter 257, the laws of Atmana. When he already mentions it, when you're doing this, you cannot have a towel on top of it. Now, in the case that it's on top of our blech, so certainly we learned from here already, l'chatchila, you can take a dry, fully cooked food, rice, schnitzel, anything you want that's dry, fully cooked, and place it on top of any pot that's hot on Shabbos. It's on a fire, it's on a blech, it's on a electric, it's all mutter. It's all mutter to be done. There's no issue to heat it up in that manner.
And the only reason you need it, even though you already have a blech, is because there's a possibility of cooking light foods on a blech, so it could likely be cooking. So your blech doesn't cover your problem yet.
Exactly. That's why you cannot put it directly on the blech. Even when you have a blech, you still need to do the 6 conditions, unless you are placing it on top of a pot. It's on the blech, in which case it doesn't look like you're cooking, so you don't need to fulfill the 6 conditions. You can take it out of your fridge.
An actual pot, it has to be a pot.
Okay, great. So that's what the mechaber says. So we now we're going to go through the Ramah and see if we can do the following. Can we, let's say there's nothing on it. Shabbos morning, I have just a little cholent on the side. I want to heat up, I don't know, rice, schnitzel, whatever it is. Can I take a thin baking pan, one that won't, not a disposable one, strong one, metal, place it on top of the electric plate, flatten it, upside down, of course, and then place things on top of it. Is that your question?
Sure.
Okay, good. That's a good question. About taking what I spoke of earlier, those little metal, like placemats, putting it over there Huh?
Yeah, it's like a hot plate for your table.
Hot plate. And placing the pot on top of that.
Right.
How low can you go? That's the question here. So let's see. ויש מתיר ניתן סייחתן ונשאף ובין בנים נחש ליתמין ובירק עפו בהם וידעים לנישו בירק הבל מעט ונחש לבישל ושן סן לגמרי יש מחמירים בזה ואם החיים כל כך מתנו שיצא לדס ביעס ואין לכמון סימשין יתחס כל הדברים שעשו לעשם בדברים אלו עשו להם עלינו יהודה לעשייס okay we're going to stop over here before I can explain the Alter Rebbe the Rama said here a few points before we get to the Rama I want to explain how the Alter Rebbe explains this halacha. The Alter Rebbe explains that he explains in length the difference between a pot with food and a pot that's empty. Okay? Now, we have so far the following information that we have compiled from the halachas we read. We learned A, an upside down pot on top of an open flame is no good unless you fill 6 conditions. A pot filled with food on top of an open flame is good without filling all 6 conditions. So now comes the $1 million question. What about an upside down pot with no food inside on top of a covered flame? Does it fall under the Isser of Sif Gimel because it's not filled with food? Or does it fall under the Heter Sefei because it's a covered fire?
It's covered.
It's covered fire. So that's the question. The Alter Rebbe rules that it is mutter. So therefore, the answer to your question is that it is permitted to be done, to take an upside down pot and put it on top of your blech or electric plate and put foods on top of it that don't have a cooking prohibition to heat up. And that's what people do. That's what people do. And therefore, we have a very easy way out that we don't need to resort to a minority opinion who argues that there's no cooking, there's no looking like cooking prohibition on electric plates. Simply take an upside down pot, put it there. You want it to be a low baking pot, be a low baking pot. And heat up your food in that manner. And you escape and avoid the controversy, as we said before, the main opinion anyways is that it's forbidden unless you do it this way. But if you do it this way, it's good. And therefore we also learn from here that any time something has occurred, you took your cholent off the electric plate, you were planning on putting it back on, and whatever happened, you fulfill all 6 conditions. You put it on your counter, a guest says he's coming later, whatever the case is. No need to panic, no need to worry. Just take an upside down pot. Put it on your glass, and take the soup and put it on top of that.
Wait a second, it's wet, it's liquid.
But it's hot.
Hot cholent, wet, you can put back on your...
Hot cholent, yes. Fully cooked cholent. It has not cooled off to the point that it's unservable. Is allowed, does not have a cooking prohibition.
Along with the other 6 conditions.
You don't need all this. The only condition you need of the 6 is that it's fully cooked and that the liquid is not cooled down. That's it. For Ashkenazim. For Sephardim, it's a bit more complex. For Sephardim, it's not so simple. Okay? So if anyone's thinking of conversion, think again. I'm going to explain one second. I want to explain what I mean by Sephardim. By an Ashkenazi, I said before, he took his soup off the fire, or his cholent, he put it on the counter, an hour passed by, he now suddenly decides, I want to put it back on. I want tomorrow morning to have hot soup. For Shabbos. So the only thing he has to do is do 2 things. Take an upside down pot or pan or whatever we said, put it on your blech or electric plate, and make sure your soup is still warm enough to be served. If he served it to a guest, he won't start gossiping on WhatsApp about your meal.
That's what it is.
No, it doesn't have to be this way.
He's using WhatsApp on Shabbos.
If he's that angry about the soup.
Okay, so the warm part is what allows us to, the fact that it's warm.
For Ashkenaz, we discussed this last week about the Machlekes, Mechaber and Ramah regarding if there's cooking after cooking by liquids that have cooled off. We said the opinion of the Mechaber is stringent, the opinion of the Ramah is lenient. That the compromise that Ashkenazim do. So for Ashkenaz, it's not a problem. You just have to do a heat test, make sure it's still semi-warm, good enough that you would eat it on the run. It's servable. It may not be boiling hot, but it's servable. Then you can go ahead and put it back on.
Because it's a soup, not a dry food.
If it's a dry food, then and it's fully cooked, and even if it's cold.
Right. So just because it's a liquid.
Exactly. By a liquid, we have a stricter cooking prohibition. This has to do with the laws of cooking in 318. This has nothing to do with laws here of heating up in a forbidden way. Once you have an upside down pot, you're heating it up in a permitted way. The question is, are you cooking on Shabbos? It's a much more severe question. And that is resolved for Ashkenazim by simply making sure that the soup or cholent or anything that contains liquid that was taken off and put on your counter is still at least warm enough to be served. Now, if you're a Sephardi, it's not that simple. That's where what you said comes in. If you are a Sephardi, you have to make sure that it is Yatzeledes, that it's minimum 110 degrees Fahrenheit, 45 degrees Celsius, and even that I say minimum because there's a big machlekes in how much Yatzeledes is. Agus Moshe says the Chatchila, when you're machmir, you have to be machmir that it's 75 degrees Celsius. That's hot, very hot.
Just a technical question. You can't put a thermometer in it, right? What do? You got to make sure it's steaming.
So we actually do follow a finger test. So he will literally have to do a finger test, to see, can my finger be in the water, in the liquid? If it scorches it, then I know it's still hot enough. If it doesn't scorch it, and it's just, it's like the story with the frog that's inside the pot of water getting heated up, it takes him some time to realize that he's getting cooked alive, then a Sephardi would have to be machmer. Now, what do you do if, as it happened to me a few weeks ago, your Sephardi neighbor, who's knowledgeable of this, Baruch Hashem, knocks on your door and he says, can you be my Shabbos guy and place my pot on the flame, on the upside down pot?
He knows he can't do it.
Exactly.
He knows you're Jewish, right?
That was a joke. The Shabbos guy was a joke, right? Yeah.
Well, for them, it's forbidden. It's an Issa D'Oraisa.
Your Shabbos Ashkenaz.
If he would do it in the times at the temple, he would have to bring a carbon chatas. If it was done by mistake, if it was done on purpose, it's more severe, of course. But the point is that the Sephardim hold it's not a joke. They hold it's an Issa D'Oraisa, just like you cooked on Shabbos from scratch. So, but for Ashkenazim, we're lenient so long as it's warm enough to be served. We said money. So the answer is that the vast majority of the Paiskim, the Sephardi Paiskim who deal with this question, all Paskin it's Asr. We cannot serve as Sephardi, Sephardi, Ashkenazi Goyim on their behalf. It doesn't help because since for them it's forbidden, they cannot, in other words, they argue like this, that anything that's forbidden for you, you can't have someone else do on your behalf because this action is a prohibited action. In the same way you can't do it, you can't benefit from it being done on your behalf. The same way, so in other words, even though we find by a guy, we find a leniency. Anything that's a machlekes in Paiskim, the chatchila, meaning some places even the chatchila is mutter, other places say the chatchila it's not mutter, you're even the chatchila allowed to ask a guy. For example, I have a maid at home. Who's a guy? And we forgot to open the tuna cans on Shabbos. So even though I do not open tuna cans on Shabbos, or before Shabbos, because of the issue with Tikkun Kli, even if we were to hold that for sure there's an issue, there's room to be lenient to have a guy open it for you, because of the issue of debate. As opening tuna cans on Shabbos is debatable in the Paiskim, so we can rule the chatchila it's mutter. So whenever you have a machlekes of the chatchila, you're allowed to have a guy do it for you if you ask him. So as far as you may ask a guy to take his, I have to look into this, but it's possible to entertain the idea of him asking a guy to place it on top of the pot. But he can't ask a Jew because from his perspective, it's usher for me to do it.
If you reverse that and say it's Pesach, we couldn't cook kitten yolk for the...
Very good. There is a huge discussion in the Paiskim. If you're allowed to cook kitnius on Shvish or Pesach on behalf of Shabbos after Pesach. And so the argument to say, those who say it's Asr say, you can't eat it. Ashkenazim can't eat it. It's not food. You're cooking on Yantif for no need. It's Asr to cook on Yantif, no need. It's Asr min HaTorah. And others say, what about the Sephardim? Well, you forgot about them. They eat it. So what do you mean it's not edible? What if a Sephardi guest comes over and wants to have some rice on Pesach? Right? So it's an argument. It's a debate. Big debate in the place.
So therefore, you're allowed to ask a goy to cook kitnius.
Well, but that's a general rule regarding goy. Anything that's on the debate of lechatchila, you're allowed to ask a guy to do for you. Now, the question is, if it's a debate between Sephardim versus Ashkenazim, do we say it's a debate? Maybe the Sephardim hold it's not a debate at all. It's very simple that it's no, but it depends, because sometimes the Machar brings two opinions. Not ever the Machar brings two opinions for sure. So anyways, so these are the complications that we get into in these cases. But the bottom line is that the upside down pot always works. So whenever you've lost a condition, put it down, something happened, you lost a condition to put your pot back on directly, just do the upside down pot trick, and that solves all of our issues.
Only if you have a black.
Correct. Yeah. Only if you have a black. Yes.
What about a timer? Can you use a timer like I don't know if I did the right thing or not, but the food was already cooked.
All right.
Okay. Put on the blood on top of an upside down pot. Eating part of it on Friday, but I don't want it to be overcooked. So then the timer is set up so that it will reheat this already cooked food for Friday night. Then it'll turn off, and it'll turn on about an hour before lunch.
Right. So definitely on Yom Tov, that's not a problem. But you're asking regarding Shabbos. So we discussed this in Siman Reish Nun Beis, the previous Siman we discussed this of setting up things on timers on Shabbos. And what we said there, anyone remember? Bottom line is like this. What we explain is as follows. You can only set up a timer to your blech if it's done with intervals to the point that the food will not get cold. By the time the timer turns back on.
So it lines up with what we just learned then.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily. Exactly. We discussed this, as I said, in 252. There's a whole article on that here. You get it inside all the details. But that's my lechatchila suggestion. Okay. Now, those who are leaning to do what you did, if it's not a liquidy food, let's say rice or kugel, it's dry. There's no cooking prohibition at all. And it got cold and it's on an upside down pot. So it's not, I can't say it's asur min hadin. It's not forbidden min hadin, as you did it before Shabbos. Before Shabbos, you set it up. You did nothing at all on Shabbos. So there's room to escape the issue. Definitely what you can do is you can do the following. Have it turn on. Okay, you can set up on a timer, have it turn on. You wait to put it on the plate until it turns on, back on.
I was just leaving it on the pot.
You just leave it on the
I could do that one.
Right.
Before Shabbos. You leave it on before Shabbos.
Okay, I have to look into if there's a difference in a case where you leave it on the whole time, or if you take it off and put it back on. But what's generally explained is that, again, the suggested approach is that you should have it turn on in intervals so it doesn't fully get cold. But in the case that you're mentioning where it's an upside down pot and it's dry, etc., said before, I can't tell you it's asur. It's not asur to do.
So I'm guessing if the pot, if it's covered, it might retain some of the heat anyway.
If it's covered, the pot on top of it? Yeah, could be. The classical case of prohibition of this would be, I want to set up my electric urn on a timer to, get hot again at 6 o'clock in the morning so I can have my coffee. Or some people have coffee machines that work on a timer. It's amazing. Helps you get out of bed. You smell your coffee. A lot of people? Oh, I said some. Okay. Edit that. A lot of people. Right, automatic, and that helps you get up because your coffee's going to get cold if you don't get out of bed soon. So you can't do that on Shabbos.
You can't do that because it's fully blended.
It's doing everything. It's cooking.
Doing everything, yeah.
It's doing everything on Shabbos. Yeah.
Even though you didn't touch it.
Correct.
Set for
Exactly.
a year in advance. You haven't touched anything.
Correct. 100% should not be done on Shabbos. Correct.
But if it could be done in such a way that the water didn't cool down, no, that's not
But it's not being
Not
done.
possible.
What if it's not being done?
What if the coffee's already made and you're reheating it? So you're setting a timer.
You're reheating the water, reboiling the water.
Can't do
Water was cold, it's not getting hot. Oh,
The usage to do it had nothing to do with it. It was set like
I
that
understand.
for
So
years.
I agree with you. We discussed this in 252 of that the idea of setting up a Shabbos clock to do malach for you on Shabbos is only permitted in certain cases, not for cooking. There's a whole truth of Moshe Feinstein on this, of the Mishnah Halachas on this. We don't allow it.
only if you follow the rule you just said, the guideline of not letting.
Correct. If it's a half hour, every half hour it turns on and off. It never gets cold. I agree with you. It's winter.
Even for water.
In a case,
Even for water?
yeah, because it didn't get cold.
Okay, fine.
But in a case where you left it off for 6 or 7 hours, it's cold, and now it reboils, reheats, it's a problem for us to do.
Determination of what cold is?
For Ashkenazim, yes. It's so long it's no longer servable. You won't serve it. You'll be embarrassed to serve cold soup.
Coffee.
Water.
You'll be embarrassed to serve cold coffee.
Coffee's kind of complicated that way because people drink cold coffee.
That's interesting.
Usually cold coffee has a greater percentage of milk. Cold coffee that's just water is kind of nasty.
Iced coffee. I make
Just water?
I make a beautiful cold brew coffee.
So we discussed this last week regarding my Russian friend who likes eating raw meat. For him, raw meat is better than cooked.
Beef tartare.
Yeah. So we don't say there's no cooking prohibition for him because by him raw is cooked. No.
So is this,
It has to be warm
is he
enough.
allowed to eat the raw
It has to
meat?
be raw. It has to be. Your coffee has to be warm enough for me to like to drink it. Okay.
So for him, he has to cook the meat on Shabbos because otherwise it's.
So it's not cooking when he cooked, but his cooked is
Yeah,
raw.
exactly. He's gonna have to cook it.
Yeah.
The burning chillin.
Okay.
Do you ever chillin pot? It's a crock pot, so technically it's like a black because the flame is covered.
Correct.
Right? When you take the pot, the ceramic thing, out of that thing, and take water and cliche into that ceramic thing.
You can't take water from cliche. You take from Clerishan. What do you mean by cliche?
You have an urn.
Oh, the reason is because, as we said before, it's only when you have something else on top of the covered fire, like a pot on top of the covered fire.
I'm saying you take it out of there. It's
Yeah.
not on fire.
The issue is not, but it will be again, right?
Yeah.
So what have you in essence done? Taken water that wasn't on the fire and placed it onto the fire.
But the water you're taking is still hot. It's probably
Correct.
got-
So therefore, there's no cooking prohibition. I got you. You're 100% correct. You do not have to pay $500 for a cow. No chatos. I agree. But there's still 1,000. But there's still a rabbinical prohibition of mechzik mavashel. The sages restricted taking foods and placing them on fire on Shabbos unless you follow the restrictions we said here, which is making it not look like you're cooking. You take water from a non-fire surface, even if it's hot because it was insulated in a thermos, and place it into your chillin pot, which will then go back on that covered flame, it's a problem. When is it not a problem? If you want to take this chillin pot with the water and place it on top of an upside-down pot that is on a blech, then we don't have an issue if your water is warm.
If you pull the urn over, like in the original case you mentioned, you pull your urn over.
Well, I said before, but he's talking about cliche.
Right.
Yes.
And the upside down pot has to be of a certain stature.
Okay, so good. So this is not directly discussed. The bottom line is that my approach is that those little metal 1-inch, things that you put on top will not suffice as a trick to put something on top of that because people do that all the time. It's like a blech. That's very similar to a blech.
No, on a black.
I'm talking about on a blech. You should use a real upside-down pot. The same way taking a piece of tinfoil that you cut before Shabbos and putting, a 1 millimeter sheet of tinfoil on your blech, it's, what is that going to do? It doesn't look like I'm cooking.
Isn't that what people do though? I see that all the time.
I don't know what people do. I know what you're supposed to do.
Okay, good. We'll just stick with that.
What you're supposed to do,
Doesn't work.
well, maybe people place tinfoil in order so they cover their blech, but you don't need to because once you're using the blech, that is in essence the covering. You never need to cover.
But you can't-
It could be they're trying to be machmir without knowledge.
So, but you can't put cold, solid food directly on a black.
I said before that the main approach is that you cannot. There are some who are lenient, and so long as they're not transgressing a cooking prohibition, you can eat their food.
But per what we're discussing, you cannot take
Correct.
cold, already
Correct.
cooked, fully
Correct.
ready, dry.
Correct.
and put it right
No
on.
good. No good. Upside down pot. Use an upside down pot. Upside down baking pan.
The baking pan's okay.
Yes.
A grill, like a grill from the oven that's
Right.
raised, that's okay?
Mm.
No, that's more like your other.
Listen. You want halak, or you want you want it to be without any questions. If you want to do it without any questions at all, use the case brought in the playskim. The case brought in the playskim is an upside down pot.
And you're saying a baking pan counts as an upside down pot?
Well, not a disposable one, because as soon as you put it on top, that's like putting tinfoil on the blech. The disposable one, flattens. A disposable baking pan will flatten the moment you place a.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a nice solid
Yes,
upside down baking pan.
correct. No problem. No problem.
Okay.
Yes. No problem.
And that's going to be like, half an inch, an upside
Yeah.
down baking pan.
Not an issue. Not an issue. Okay. The Ramah now went into discussing placing into an oven on Shabbos. And basically, we discussed this last week already, how in the Mechaber, you're never allowed to do chazara into an oven. Never okay. Even if you fill all 6 conditions. And we also explained that those who are lenient don't have to be protested. We said both of those things last week. But l'chatchila, you're never allowed to return something to an oven. Now, what happens if the oven is off? Let me give you the case scenario. The case scenario was like this. Everyone already lit candles at home. Actually, it could even be it was past Shkia, it was past sunset already. Let's just say it was past sunset, make it simpler, okay? It was past sunset. And they forgot, they usually are accustomed, this family, to turn the oven on before Shabbos, make it super, super hot, and have it go off right before Shabbos, and it's still warm, and they put the food inside.
Before Shabbos.
Before Shabbos,
Yeah, right.
But in this case, they forgot. So if they do it before Shabbos, what's the issue? There's no issue. But they forgot. So now they want to know, can they go ahead and put the food inside of the oven on Shabbos?
After it's already
The oven
turned
is
on.
off, but hot. So this is the case here. And Rabbi here says, if the oven is still yatzeledes, it's forbidden.
If the oven is still
Yatzeledes, 110 Fahrenheit, 45 degrees Celsius.
yatzeledes?
Yatzeledes. Yad Seledes.
So hot that your hand would retract.
Seledes?
Yeah.
It translates the whole phrase for you.
Hand, Seledes means you remove it. Okay.
From the shore.
How about this? So Seledes from Russian slide. It will slide away.
Applying English to the. What is Seledes? I'm curious too now. What is that for?
It means that you'll remove it because of the heat.
So the Hebrew verb.
Remove.
But we don't have a lashon on Seledes where it comes from. What's the shore?
Ask your local Ulpan teacher.
You don't know.
Right now I don't know.
Seledes. Okay.
Okay.
And remove from it or in it, both. Or both come.
You remove your hand from it. It's too hot for your hand to remain there. It's too hot of a jacuzzi. Okay. So clearly, if it's yatzeledes and malasot, you cannot put it back in on Shabbos. This is even more severe. You didn't fulfill any conditions. It's sitting on your table, the food, before Shabbos. So we discussed this last week. That on Shabbos is a whole controversy. If it was already on the fire into Shabbos, but here it wasn't. It was on the table before Shabbos, and you forgot. So this for sure forbidden. Now in this case, so I checked the heat of the oven, and it was not yatzeledes. It wasn't that hot. It wouldn't get the food to yatzeledes, that's for sure. Is it mutter? Dispute in the Halacha is that whilst those who are lenient don't have to be protested, the Alter Rebbe concludes to be stringent. Meaning that in this case, chatchila, they should not place it into the oven at all.
Because it might look like they're cooking.
Correct. Well, yes, that's the main issue. Okay.
There'll be a timer on the oven before you go off. You go off, say, an hour after your.
So long as your food is in there before Shabbos, then we don't have an issue at all. So long as your food's half cooked, we don't have any issue with that.
And you can even leave the oven on.
Leaving an oven on when you want to take out your food enters in the question of the necessity of a Shabbos oven, Shabbos mode oven, because electric appliances generally work with a thermostat, which is changed and affected when you open up doors and close doors. Even though back then they didn't have thermostats, the idea is already discussed in the Paiskim. We're going to learn in other halachas of opening up the door of an oven, causing wind or air to enter, and causing an issur to happen as a result. So that idea was already discussed many generations ago in halacha. And the same thing applies today when you have a thermostat oven. So that's when we have Shabbos mode. So if you're having a timer, turn it off. By the time you open it, it's already off. Nothing's going to happen. If it's on, then when you open it up, it can affect something in the thermostat. It could turn back on again because the oven thought it was nice and hot. Now suddenly got a gust of cold air, and its sophisticated system tells it, turn back on, we got to make the food hot again. Now he doesn't know that you took your food out already. He doesn't have that information. And if he does, then there's an isser to ever take it out because you just told him that you took your food out. So the more sophisticated we get with all these appliances, the more Shabbos problems we have. We discussed this in the past. With fridges, this is a huge problem today. Today's fridges, if you buy today a modern fridge, super sophisticated. And most likely, 99%, when you open your door on Shabbos, there's most likely about 10 different things that are happening in the computer every time you open your door. That's why we have Shabbos modes, to negate those things. We have a Shabbos system. You can order it you can get a nice, expensive fridge, and you can order a piece that the technicians attach. Or as people used to do back in the day, what do? They attach their fridge to a timer. They would have their fridge turn off in half-hour intervals, meaning instead of the fridge turning off on its own and then get affected by whatever you do, the timer turns it off. So meaning from the plug, so nothing will happen. That's what people do till today. People do this. But today it's more severe because of the sophistication. Before Shabbos, they set it up.
But I mean, the fridge stays off all the Shabbos.
No. It turns on and off. Based on the timer. They set up a timer, go on. Right, so if you did the good thing and you bought a Shabbos mode fridge, hey, very good. But I'm talking about someone who didn't. Not everyone's aware of this. You bought the new $10,000 Samsung fridge with a beautiful screen, a Galaxy screen. You can see the food inside. You don't have to open up your fridge to see the food. Just press a button, there's cameras everywhere. So such a fridge is a big Shabbos problem.
So you could, going back, if you, before Shabbos, turn on the oven and then turn it off, but it's below Yad Shalev, then you could take bread and warm it on Shabbos. Is that correct?
Well, we said it's machlekes. And we said the general ruling is to be stringent, but you can put it on top of a plot in your plot.
Oh, yeah.
That you can.
That.
Oven is more severe. Inside of an oven has more severe halacha.
Let me ask about the inside of the oven question. Let's say you have no bread box in your house. It's now after the Shabbos, the oven is cool. So you want to store your bread in the oven?
That's not a problem at all. The oven's off. No, we don't have a precedent in halacha to forbid storing things in an oven just because people may think it's on and you're trying to cook. I agree with you that it may look like that to some people, but we don't have a gzeira. Is a rule in Marasai, and we can't invent gzeiros of Marasai. If it's written, it's written. If it wasn't written, that means it was never passed as legislation. That means it's mutter. We may think it doesn't look good, but there's no isser.
Did you already cover the case if the oven had cooled down? I'm not talking about this case at all. I'm talking about the taking out of the food once the oven shuts off into Shabbos. If it cools down to complete cool, is it okay to take out? You already covered that?
Whenever
case?
the oven's off,
yeah,
you can take out the food without any restriction.
Not if it's Yad Tzedek full. It's still
what? The oven?
It's off, but it remains Yad Tzedek full.
No, there's no issue if it's off, meaning it won't turn back on.
Wait a second. If
I set it up on a timer again. Yeah. If I put a timer, okay, that my oven will shut off for good. Okay, until I turn it back on again after Shabbos, an hour into Shabbos. So after that hour is passed, even if I don't have a Shabbos mode oven and it works on thermostat, nothing will happen when I open it up after that hour because it's off.
Okay, even if it's Yad Tzedek, so let us vote.
What's the issue?
Well, what was the case with Yad Tzedek?
The case of Yad Tzedek is where your food wasn't in before Shabbos and you want to put it in now on Shabbos into the oven. Then we said that if it's Yad Tzedek, you're not allowed to put it in. Even if it's not Yad Tzedek, if it's not Yad Tzedek, it's a machlekes. If it's Yad Tzedek, it's forbidden. Okay? Irrelevant if it's on or off, doesn't matter. If the heat inside Yad Tzedek, you can't put it in. Okay? Now you're asking about removing it. So removing it, there's no issue to remove food. There's no issue that says thou shalt not cause food that is cooking to not be cooked on Shabbos.
Okay.
Doesn't exist.
Okay.
So if I have a food that's not fully cooked and I took it off the fire, you just transgressed an uncooking prohibition. No, you did not. There's no such uncooking prohibition. But the issue that there is causing the thermostat to drop, causing the heat to turn on, and that can be avoided by attaching to a timer, having a Shabbos mode
What if
oven.
it's below Yatzeles well, but it's still warm? That was the machlokas. you said.
Yes, that's the machlekes case. If you can put into it on Shabbos.
We got only a few more minutes. You guys want to stay to the end?
We have 10 more minutes. 10 minutes, 11:15. Everything that we just learned that's forbidden to be done is likewise forbidden to tell a goy to do. So here the Ramah refers to the idea of Amir Lanachri. There is no leniency here to ask a guy to do this. You can't ask a guy to take the kugel and put it on top of your fire, even though there's no cooking prohibition. Meaning even the rabbinical looking like your cooking prohibition is forbidden to be done through a guy. And that's a general halacha. Amir Lanachri is forbidden even by an Issa D'Rabbanan. There's no extra leniency. If a person did this and asked a guy on Shabbos to take his kugel and put it on top of the open flame fire to heat up, cannot eat the kugel on Shabbos.
Because there's no machlokas.
There's no machlekes in this case. But if he did it on top of your electric plate or blech, we already said before, it's a machlekes, so you can be lenient.
But which, on a pot though.
No, that even I can do. I'm talking about a guy.
Oh, you can ask your guy if it's not on the pot.
It's a machlekes, right? So anytime it's a machlekes,
Once you're asking a goy, though, aren't you then creating an outcome that you benefit from and already?
correct. That's why if it was forbidden for you to do, you cannot benefit from it.
Without a machlokas, forbidden without a machlokas.
But if it's right, forbidden without machlekes. But if it's forbidden with a machlekes, then we're lenient. So in the case of an electric plate, which you said is a machlekes, so if he puts it on top without the upside down pot, you can be lenient to eat the food on Shabbos. But if he did so on an open flame, then it is forbidden to do so on Shabbos. Now what if he didn't ask us? Martha woke up in the morning, said first Shabbos at the sugar home. Yeah, the Goldstein home needs it. And she goes ahead and takes out the rice and the schnitzel and who knows what, the soup, and puts it on top of the flame on Shabbos. Heats everything up.
How much the flame? Not black, not top.
No
just
black. Flame. Yeah, she does it as it is.
Without being told.
So everything, I wouldn't be able to eat anything on Shabbos. Now, if it cools off, if my now hot kugel has now gotten cold, so I lost the benefit already anyways.
Interesting.
And
There's
then
an
you can put it
argument.
on the upside down.
And then you can fix it again, right? Then you can fix the situation again.
Right.
But in the case of a soup pot, okay, she just transgressed cooking by that. When she put it in an upside down pot, or even doesn't matter where she put it, she just cooked it on Shabbos. And then we rule it is
What if the
forbidden to eat on
soup's already
Shabbos. It is already cooked, but it's cold.
Yeah, but you just said she cooked it.
Yeah, because we hold that any liquid that's cooled off has a cooking prohibition. So she has cooked it,
So she heated it up,
which is cooking on Shabbos.
but it's already cooked soup.
I just explained. By liquids, we hold as cooking after cooking. So if it got cold, that means it now can be recooked, not reheated, recooked.
Oh, so
Once it cools down, it's raw.
Yeah, liquids, the whole advantage of a hot liquid is the heat. Once it's cold, we consider it as if it became raw again. Think of a piece of chicken that when it's hot, it's nice and chewy and yummy, and when it gets cold, it turns into flesh again. So it doesn't happen by chicken. If it does, you should call some people. But it definitely does happen by liquid. Okay, so there is a cooking prohibition by liquid, as explained before. Bottom line is the idea here is that if a guy did a cooking prohibition or even a chazara, a heating prohibition, that's prohibited across the board on Shabbos, you cannot benefit from the food, and that's why you have to have a sit-down talk. Now, but the one second. In this case, though, where you didn't know, okay, you didn't know that she was doing this, and this was, of course, against your will, it's more lenient, though. It's only in the case where the Jew either told her or didn't protest, like he saw her doing it and he didn't say anything. In the case where she did so against her will, in that case we're more lenient. Let's see how we rule. In the case of Chazara, guy.
And a cooling off issue?
One second.
Go for that.
So, if the Jew was unaware of the Gentile's actions, they'll tell the right spouse. The Jew which owns the food did not know when the Gentile returned the pot that the food was completely cold, or he did, but he did not at all notice the Gentile coming to return it. Thus cannot have protested against the Gentile. He woke up at 7 o'clock, sees all this food on the fire cooking, and the food is permitted to be eaten on Shabbos, being that most probably the Jew did not want at all for the Gentile to heat up his food after it had become prohibited, and thus the food remains permitted, as Gentile does not have the power to prepare the food of a Jew against his will. This is only, by the way, if there's no cooking prohibition. So the case of the soup is no good. Okay? But in the case of the kugel, the dry rice, in all those cases, it would be fine.
And you don't have to wait till it cools down.
No, because it was against your will. Okay, but if you witness this and you just pled the fifth,
Then you can wait till it cools down.
then seemingly you would definitely not be able to eat it until it cools down. And if it cools down, seemingly you would, because you've lost the
But
benefit.
soup wouldn't count. You couldn't do soup that way. That's what we said before.
Soup's done, you're saying. So there's no soup on Saturday, on Shabbos day.
Unless you leave it on. Leave it on your blech the whole time.
That's gonna evaporate.
No, when I've done it very often. Put a lot of soup, a lot of liquid in before Shabbos. We've done it all the
It's a
time.
technical question, but you're right.
There's no problem. We've done it all the time. There's nothing like having a nice hot bowl of soup when you wake up in the morning. Even if you're machmir.
But by noon, I mean, if you.
Yeah, we've done it by noon also, the whole Shabbos.
And a
Hot
blech.
soup the whole Shabbos.
So you must have a big high pot that you're sitting on, because the blech has enough heat, it's gonna evaporate.
Yeah. It's a big
Yeah, you
pot of
can do
soup. Big pot of soup,
The
sure.
chicken soup will last. Sometimes it gets a little bit overcooked and then a little bit sort of funny.
Yeah.
But
Try it and see.
As long as you don't take it off.
Unless you do the 6 conditions. You take it off and do the 6 conditions and put it back on. Okay?
You have to hold it in one condition.
Yeah, correct.
So if you sleep with it in the bed and you're holding it.
Make a special product, like a
I'm saying,
hand.
I generate a lot of body heat, so if I hold it, I put it on my chest, it will never get cold.
And then from my understanding, you don't have to put it on, if you have the 6 conditions, you don't have to worry about putting it on a pot.
Great.
I mean, right, Rabbi? You don't have to worry, if you got the 6 conditions, you don't have to put it on a pot.
Correct, exactly.
Oh, your 2-minute warning, only
Okay.
because of the Gemara issue.
So just place it near another.
Yeah.
Head out for a full day. Thank you.
You gotta raise some money, give people 1,000 shekels to come to all the sharing. Like that idea?
Okay, I'll look this up after the shir. I want to finish the sif, which is in essence finish the siman. Right, so of course, if the food was still warm when he did this, it would be mutter because there's no real benefit here, even though you weren't allowed to do it. If food was still warm. If he took a warm pot of soup, okay, that was on the blech, that was on the counter, and he put it back onto the actual blech, you're allowed to eat on Shabbos.
At 8 o'clock is the next shift.
Noigen, ha'enum yudim motzim akres menatanim shematimim b'moshiv v'nisom eitzel tanu be'sachayef o'yelav u'mevaeres ha'shivcha achkach tanu ha'hu v'aydei zakdeus chayz v'netachan v'aydei Yisrael aser. Okay, agavna, avalim akdes dan cham mutul atamidan eitzel tanu be'sachayef ach shenesbar zathun shalom yishnam dinkir v'smicha b'kir shena guf ktuma kedin guf ktuma lin nisin olah. As shenogel hak b'chsov shas filo nichal gabi kak v'hu adin smicha tanu shena guf ktuma v'kdir dan cham kodzoch in mikposh lahat v'nekumon shemishin yichas. Okay, this is pretty much the end of this siman. Which from next week we're going to begin from Reish Nun Daled, the laws of making barbecues before Shabbos, into Shabbos.
Let me clarify what they said. Polishing on the platter, before, it's only before Shabbat. It can stay on the platter, or you have to put it on a.
Before Shabbos, it can be directly on the plata. The issue of the upside down is only when you removed it on Shabbos and now want to put it back on.
If not on those, then you have to put it back on.
Exactly.
On the outside.
Yeah. But into Shabbos, not an issue. Yeah, okay. We can Shkoyach.
All right, it's great. Tuesday night at 8 o'clock is the next year. It's a beginning of short hour. We're still very much in the beginning. We're working with Jew.
We're starting Laws of Tzitzis.
Oh, Laws of Tzitzit, that's right.
Just started.
Tuesday night, 8 o'clock is Laws of Tzitzit, and moving forward through the whole short hour.